Unless you were under a rock, you know about the Drake and Kendrick battle that ensued. You gotta throw JCole in there as well. This is not like two boxers or UFC fighters getting in the ring and they respect each other. This is more along the lines of real hatred. I mean, Kendrick said
I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress.
Some people would say the battle was won by Kendrick. But the bigger question is, what is the battle? The problem in this entire thing for me.
This is The Deep End with Lecrae.
Unless you were under a rock or you were not paying attention to anything on social media, you know about the Drake and Kendrick battle that ensued. And also, you got to throw JCole in there as well. There's a lot of characters you could throw in there, of course, but you know, for all intents and purposes, I'll talk about Drake, JCole, and Kendrick. And this is not just a conversation about them. It's a conversation about us. It's a conversation about what we believe and think and who we are internally. Because I feel like what happened with them is a picture of a lot of things in society. But for those people who are unaware, behind the scenes, there's been some kind of back and forth for years between Drake and Kendrick. And there's been like undercover jabs in music over a period of time, but it got a lot more overt when Kendrick put out a song with Metro called Like That, and basically he just took a bunch of shots that were clearly at Drake, and he, you know, one that would seem like it was saying, JCole, if you want the smoke, I got it for you as well. The response was initially from JCole, who wrote a song called 7 Minute Drill, where he went at Kendrick. He later said he felt terrible for it and couldn't sleep. He apologized, took the song down, and stepped away from the battle. And then from there, Drake and Kendrick began to trade shots in terms of songs. You know, it was kind of like Drake would release a song, then a couple weeks later, Kendrick, and then Drake, and then Kendrick right back at it. And it went back and forth until what I believe is Drake kind of said, all right, I'm done with this. Now, depending on how you view it, some people would say the battle was won by Kendrick. But the bigger question is, what is the battle? Like, is it a battle of who's the best lyricist? Who's the most popular? Who can rap the best? Like, what is the battle? And I think that is also a question we got to ask ourselves, right? Because there's a lot of people who are team Drake because I think they see themselves in Drake, right? They value what he values. There's a lot of people that are team Kendrick because they see themselves in Kendrick and they value what he values. But more than anything, I think so many of us are just people who are spectators. And behind the scenes, there's real lives and real challenges and real problems taking place. And there's real consequences. And we're bloodthirsty and we want to see a lot of this ensue because it's entertainment for us, kind of like the gladiator games. And because there's no real consequences for us, we're not really invested in seeing this land in a healthy way. We actually want to see more jabs and more salacious stories and how intense this can get. You know, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm speaking for certain people. I think for me, it hits a little different. One, because I'm a rapper, right? Obviously. I grew up in the culture of hip hop. I actually know two of the artists personally. One of them I know decently well. And I love the Lord. So there's a lot of tension even in my own soul about all of this, right? I think first and foremost, let me just tell you this, okay? I know Kendrick Lamar. I've known Kendrick since probably, maybe 2009. Before he was the Kendrick that we all know. You know, when I first met Kendrick, I had more followers on Twitter than he had, you know what I mean? And he put out this song called The Faith. And when he dropped the song, I reached out to him because I was like, wow, I was intrigued by his open wrestle with his faith. And we just began talking, and then we started texting and talking on the phone, and just kind of built a relationship that just over the years, it's been like a very like, I haven't really detailed a lot of it because for me, I never wanted it to seem like I was clout chasing or I was using his name to somehow bolster my career. Plus, there were real things that, he was asking me questions about, and I just didn't feel like that was my place to be like, hey, let me tell the whole world this for my own gain and my own benefit. So I would say this, I've known him as a person more than just a rapper. And when you know a person, it adds a different layer of nuance and complexity when you see this type of battle. Because it's not just me watching two people and as a spectator go to war, is seeing real human beings. I've met JCole a couple of times. We had a couple conversations, nothing too crazy. Actually, it's kind of embarrassing. My first conversation with JCole is really low-key embarrassing. Not even low-key, it's high-key embarrassing. Why not? I'll just tell y'all the story. I wrote a rap about it. I don't think I ever put the rap out, but the song was like, ran into Cole at the Super Bowl. I was super thrilled. And that's the truth. I was, at this time, I was drinking too much. I don't drink anymore, but at that time, I was in a weird place with my faith and everything. And I was battling with alcoholism, functional alcoholism at least. Had too much to drink, ran into JCole at a Super Bowl party. It was a private event. And there weren't a lot of people there. It was like me, 2 Chainz, Rihanna, JCole, maybe some pro football players. And we're just hanging out in the lounge. And I walk up to Cole and I'm like, yo, man, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah, what's up, man? I said, are you a Christian? I don't know why that, like, it was more obnoxious. It's like, why is that the leading question that I come out with? Not like, how you doing? What's your name? Here's my name, blah, blah, blah. Like none of that. Skip the formalities. Just no foreplay, just straight to the heart. Are you a Christian? And he said, no, I'm very familiar. I've studied it, but I would say I'm very spiritual, not religious. You know what I'm saying? And I said, okay. And I said, well, man, I'd love to just chop it up with you. You know what I'm saying? Talk a little bit. I might be slurring, but in my mind, I'm a picture of Jesus. I'm gonna talk to you a little bit. You know what I mean? And I said, man, you know what I'm saying? Man, take my number down. And I told him, I said, yo, take my number. And he took my number in his phone. And he begins to walk away. I said, yo, you didn't even write my name in the phone. I didn't even tell you my name. And he looked at me and he said, I know who you are. And I was really embarrassed at that moment. One, because, man, I just felt like I missed out on an opportunity to have a regular conversation with JCole and like an engaging conversation. But instead, I just looked like a drunken fool. So I am years into my sobriety now, thank God. But yeah, it was a weird place. All that to say, that was my initial interaction with Cole. The second one was not as chaotic, so thank God for that. All that to say, my interaction with him, I felt like, man, this is a regular good dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? I didn't walk away like with this idea of him as some kind of superstar. I saw him as, he engaged me in conversation, even though I wasn't really able to have the great conversation I should have been having. So anyway, I saw him as a regular human being. He probably saw me as, wow, this Christian dude, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So probably wasn't the best witness, but man, thank God for his grace. The thing too, I got to mention this, the thing too about the fact that it was just kind of like me, JCole, Rihanna, and 2 Chainz is that I was privy to like access that other people wouldn't get access to. And that's something that I want for y'all. So make sure you subscribe to the BSide. Download the BSide app so that you can have access that other people don't have. You can get content that other people don't get. You can hear stories that other people won't hear, and that's only going to happen by you subscribing, downloading the BSide app, and joining the family. We want to see you there. So I see Kendrick and Cole as human beings, and I know people in both camps. I know these are guys that were very similar to me. I go out, I do my show, I record my songs, and I go back to civilian life. I go back to like being a father and a husband, much like them. They're not like at every party, hanging out, trying to be seen on the scene. That's just not them. Drake, on the other hand, is the quintessential pop star. Like, he's iconic. He's everywhere where there's somewhere to be. If Leonardo DiCaprio's having a party in the hills, Drake is showing up, right? Like, he's the epitome of, like, you know, pop icon and just living a rock star life. So when you see this war of worlds happening, from my vantage point, what I see is more a battle of values, right? Like, you have Drake, who's probably saying this is a battle for who's the best, and best meaning biggest, most popular, most money, most celebrated, right? And Kendrick is saying, no, this is a battle for who's the better lyricist, who's more transformative in the culture, who's more, you know, influential in terms of like a Tupac or a Nas was in terms of the culture and hip hop. And I think J. Cole leans more toward the same side as Kendrick does, but he's caught in between these two friendships and worlds, and he bows out. Now, if you come from the era I come from, y'all, where I saw all these great battles happen, and I'm a student of hip hop. I studied the battles before my time with KRS-One and, you know, Roxanne Shante, The Bridge Is Over, and, you know, MC Shan, all the way to Tupac and Biggie's and, you know, Dr. Dre and Eazy-E. Like, I've seen so many iterations and eras. I mean, little things like Bone Thugs and Harmony and 666 Mafia. Like, I was around for so many of these like hip hop battles that there's a texture that you become that becomes the norm. And so in hip hop culture, you don't apologize and bow out of a battle. That is culturally a no-no. It's like, if you're a street dude, you're not supposed to snitch. So for J. Cole to bow out is like, dang, bro, you let Nas down again, right? So I think that's the general perspective of those people who love hip hop. And then it's also like J. Cole raps about how he's the best lyricist and how he's dope and no one wants to test him. So how can I ever really take you seriously if you bowed out of this battle? As a hip hop fan and a hip hop aficionado, that does not make sense. However, as a healed man, as a man who's seeking to be an apprentice and follower of Jesus, I actually think that was very wise. It's actually very respectable for him to say, you know what, this isn't right. And not because I'm afraid of the smoke, right? Because I think that's what the spectators and the fans are seeing. Like, oh, he's afraid of getting washed lyrically. He's saying, no, there's real implications behind this. There's real tension, real hatred brewing. And I don't really want to be a part of that. I don't know, outside of like maybe some of the old school New York hip hop battles where it wasn't real beef. This is not like two boxers or UFC fighters getting in the ring and they respect each other. This is not like two big athletes getting on the court or the field and they respect each other and they're going to go to war and then it's all over with, it's said and done. This is more along the lines of real hatred. Like, I mean, Kendrick said it. I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk. Like, and so I believe J. Cole is saying, I don't want to be a part of real hatred. I don't want to be a part of it. It's almost like, man, if God is not drawing this brother, I don't know. I just, it makes me want to pray for Cole because I'm like, man, this may be the effectual call of God on this man's heart. Like, this is the type of stuff the type of character that Christians want to exemplify and pull in. So I guess really what I'm just trying to say is that as a Christian, as a man who's been healed from therapy and understands my identity, my purpose, my worth, my value, and the most important things in life, I can understand J. Cole saying, I'm going to bow out of this because there's real hatred in this that I don't want to involve myself in. I will say, though, I don't know how he moves forward writing songs about how he's the best rapper, about how no one wants to test him, no one wants to see him. I don't know how that works. That's an interesting dynamic to me. And I honestly think that, that may be his reflex of like when he's just trying to rap and show bravado, because it's like he's not going to say, I got guns and I'll shoot you. He's not going to talk about how much, jewelry or cars. Sometimes he does talk about his money and whatnot, but that's not his thing. So now we move to Drake and Kendrick, which, again, in knowing Kendrick and knowing the circle he comes from, Kendrick has people who will really crash out for him. That's what there's people locked behind walls right now that if they got free, they would go back for Kendrick. Let me just say that. Now, I don't know Drake's world. I don't know his side. I'm cool with some of those people who are locked behind walls right now, and I think that's a real thing. The tension for me is that the human condition is at play here, right? Like, I think in some senses, we all need friends like Kendrick who are going to tell us about ourselves. I never want to have to run into somebody in a rap battle to tell me the truth about myself. I do think Kendrick is like, bro, you need to work on yourself as a man, Drake. Like, you are a kid from Toronto who was not cool. You were not the cool kid in school. You were a child actor. You weren't really in tune with hip hop culture or black culture for that matter. You were raised by a Jewish mother. You are a spectator in this world of urban culture, and then you're trying to enter in it. You were on record historically saying how the way hood people talked in Toronto was ignorant, right? So this is not something you live and breathe. When there are issues within the black community, you're not raising your voice to say, hey, this needs to stop. You profit off of misogyny and off of, bragging about how much money and jewelry and cars you have. There's no songs in your catalog that are trying to help shape the community that you take so much from in terms of the craft, in terms of who you use for features and so on and so forth. Now, it's not to say that your stardom and fame has not lended its power to these artists to help them rise. It's just to say that there's been no overt communication about the plight of disenfranchised people in minority communities that you do work with so exclusively. So it can feel like appropriation. And it's why I think Kendrick becomes the people's champ, is because though there's inconsistencies, though Kendrick may talk about some stuff that's like, yo, we don't want to see you, have to gun a guy down. We don't want to hear the tough talk because we know that's not where you want to go. By and large, he's talking about how a human being becomes healthier and healed. By and large, he's a person who's seeking wisdom and seeking to give it versus just to live a YOLO life well into his late 30s and early 40s. So that's what I love. I love that the People's Champ came with a battle that challenged someone to grow and not be stagnant and continue to perpetuate a false reality. You know what I mean? Like, Drake's not a tough dude from the hood. He's a pop star from the suburbs of Toronto. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that he's not embracing it. Justin Bieber embraced it, right? Or whoever, it's like Kanye embraced being a college dropout. He never tried to be a tough guy. So I think that's the associations and so on and so forth makes it weird. Historically, rap battles have been about who's the better lyricist, who comes with the better bars. I can't sit here and say Drake didn't hold his own. I'd be lying. Like, lyrically, I think he did hold his own. But I think that Kendrick, I mean, the man won a Pulitzer Prize for his use of words. That's a tough person to go against. I think that Kendrick is a phenomenal wordsmith. Now, the problem in this entire thing for me is that I still believe you have two people who are fighting for a sense of identity. Because why do you have to be crowned the king? Why do you have to be known as the best? Like, what are we chasing? And in my mind, it's the same thing that Lucifer was chasing after. He was saying, like, listen, I need to be seen and known as respectable. You need to put some respect on my name, and I'm going to show you that I'm better than you. It becomes a problem when your identity's on the line. See, when you're playing basketball, it's not the same type of, it could be identity wrapped up into whether you win or lose. That can be a thing. However, for the most part, it's not a war trying to tear down someone's identity. It's not me trying to best you to show you you're fake and I'm real. It's not me trying to best you to show you that I'm superior to you. And that is the ultimate problem with finding our worth in what we do. What we tend to do is find the quality of our work as the quality of our worth. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing between these guys, which I think is so unhealthy. Because at the end of the day, in order to be great, you've got to have someone less than you, right? That you've got to have someone to step on in order for you to have value and worth if we're talking about the quality of our work. If your identity is shaped by what you do and being the best at it, then you got to step on someone else to prove that you are worthy of whatever it is you say you are. You know, C.S. Lewis says in Mere Christianity that we're not really concerned with having money. We're concerned with having more money than the next person. The idea is that we're just constantly comparing ourselves to someone else to see how valuable we are. Because if I have $100 million, but there's no one else on the planet, it doesn't make me better than anyone because there's no one to compare myself to. So we get stuck in this, what I would say, identity trap. And at the end of the day, we're fighting the human condition. And the human condition is riddled with a false sense of identity and worth, pride, arrogance, and we're also living in a broken world that has to struggle with what Ephesians 2 talks about as the world, the flesh, and the devil. What is the world? The world is all the things that culturally are in opposition of the Lord. The Bible says God hates pride. And I mean, we're celebrating pride in this particular battle, right? There's no way around that. You can say I'm holy rolling or whatever, but at the end of the day, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That's scripture. The flesh is our worldly desires, our broken humanity that wants to best one another, not love one another. We want blood, right? We want to be better than everyone else for the sake of our own identity. Our flesh is broken. It wants to hate. It wants to lust. It wants to take and envy and steal and retaliate and be vengeful when vengeance is the Lord's. And then there's the devil, the prince and the power of the air, who is literally lying to us all the time. You should be seen as the best. You should be respected. They need to put respect on your name, and not in the terms of just human dignity. No, they need to bow to your greatness. And that's the prince and the power of air. That's what he wanted. Like, they need to bow to my greatness. So end of the day, I think the real battle is between humanity and the world, the flesh, and the devil, right? The battle is just fought with different weapons, same enemy. And I love Ephesians 1 because in Ephesians 1, God is telling us who we are. We don't have to go get in a rap battle to demonstrate our value and our worth. Ephesians 1 is literally, I'm going to read it. This is what Paul says in Ephesians 1. I'm going to read it. Paul says this. He says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus, who's blessed us with every spiritual blessing." So we got every spiritual blessing. He chose us before the foundation of the world. So we're chosen, holy and blameless. That's who we are, predestined for adoption to himself, to the praise of his glorious grace. In him we have redemption through his blood. We have an inheritance. We're predestined. He goes on and on and on, even going into Ephesians 2, where he says we're his workmanship, created for things that he's already pre-planned. Workmanship means, the Greek word is poema, which is poetry. We're his poetry. Like, when we know our value based off who God says we are, we don't have to fight for it. We don't have to beat on people to demonstrate that I'm valuable. Which is why I think if that's what JCole's thought process was, he's moving in the right direction, right? It does me no good to beat you down to show you how great I am. Yeah, that's where the lies come into play. The lies come into play to tell us that we're only valuable if we're better than someone else. That we're only valuable if we're more powerful than someone else. Whenever you make anything like your ability or your body or your looks a part of your identity, they'll ultimately begin to crush you. Those things are going to crush you because they've got to always measure up. Because when they don't measure up, now your identity and your value is worthless. So I wouldn't be surprised if internally Drake is feeling a sense of worthlessness and having to go count his money, or having to go look at his bank account, or having to go think about all the beautiful women that he slept with, or all the awards he has, in order to reassure himself that even though he lost the culture war, he's still valuable. I wouldn't be surprised if he has to go look at the things he's done to remind himself of his worth. When at the end of the day, I've said it a million times, our value, our worth, our purpose is received, not achieved. If you got to work for it, it's not authentic. It's not really where your value lies. Jesus already achieved it on the cross. You don't have to do any extra work. God already achieved it when he made you in his likeness and his image. You don't have to go pummel somebody in a battle to show that you're valuable. I remember when I was in high school, and in high school, my value was being the dope rapper. Like, just candidly, I was the best rapper at every school I was at. And that was my value until we got a transfer student named Steve from Brooklyn, the birthplace of hip hop. So here I am in the cafeteria every day, beating on the tables, beating on my chest, rapping, destroying everybody. And here comes Steve from Brooklyn. He's kicking metaphors and similes and bars and references. I was just destroyed. And because of that, my value was now in question. My identity, my worth was in question. So what did I do? I had two choices. I could either run away from him so that I could maintain some semblance of value, or I can associate with him so I can regain some sense of value. So I just started associating with him, and I learned from him because I was like, oh no, I got to secure my value and my worth and my identity. So I got to hang around Steve so that I can benefit and learn this technique. Now, the good news is I became a better rapper. The bad news is that all it did was, reignite a false sense of self-worth and identity. To where you fast forward, I'm writing a song about identity because I'm still wrestling with that reality. I'll never forget, I'm nominated for a Grammy against Drake, Eminem, Kendrick, and Childish Gambino. And in the category, I'm like, yo, I want to win this. And I wanted to win it so bad because what it would prove is that I was worthy. It would prove that, yeah, the little lowly Christian rapper from no man's land that nobody cares about, that when he walked the red carpet and no one took pictures of him, still matters because he beat the big guys. Look at me, I matter. And God already told me I mattered. He told me in scripture. I mean, the creator of creation himself knows me by name, and I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting for a false sense of identity. I love this quote that Tim Keller says. He says this, he says, we have to be esteemed to have self-esteem. You've got to be esteemed from someone else if you're going to have any self-esteem, because your self-worth, if it comes from the art world or the academy, what happens when these people disillusion you? Where's your value now, right? The praise of the praiseworthy is above all awards. So really what we all want is to be praised by people we esteem, because that reinforces our value system. Like, I remember watching a Kanye documentary, and Kanye was sitting in there, and all these rappers would come into the studio and tell him he was dope. And he's like, yo, such and such just came in and said I was dope. It's crazy. And now fast forward, those people could not affirm him. He's surpassed them. So he's like, I need affirmation from somewhere else. Someone's got to esteem me. And there's no one else I respect who's higher than me but God. So I'm going to call myself God. I must be God because I esteem no one else. And that's literally the chaos and craziness that we descend into when we're constantly looking for validation from others. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need that from other people, because that's how children develop. They need that affirmation from their parents, right? Until you get to a certain place where you're like, I don't really want yours. I want my peers and social media. It's helpful, but human beings are always going to let you down. They're always going to be not as great at demonstrating to you how valuable you are, right? You're going to esteem this person who esteems you, and then you're going to see the kinks and cracks in them, and you're gonna say, oh man, or they're gonna let you down. But what if your value and your worth and your identity is given to you by someone who can never fail? Well, God is not a man that he should lie. God is not a human being. So if God is telling you who you are and your worth and your value, now you have something to really hold on to. Now no one can come in and say you're a terrible rapper, you're ugly, you're broke, and your sense of worth is diminished, because you're like, I mean, that's a circumstance right now that I'm dealing with, but this is who I am. And there's nothing you can do to take away from the fact that I'm blessed with every spiritual blessing in Christ. And the thing I love about that scripture, Ephesians 1, thing I love about it, over and over again, it says, in him we've obtained this. You are this in him. And if you get real deep and theological, that's a term that it basically, the theological conversation around it is like, we're in union with Christ. Basically, what he is our representative. What happens to him happens to us. What happens for him happens for us. So because Christ has ascended the throne, now we get every spiritual blessing that he has. So God literally is looking at us through the lens of Jesus. And if you think about it like this, David and Goliath, David goes out to war against Goliath. He's their representative for Israel. What happens to David happens to Israel. If David loses, they don't just lose this war. Like, literally their village is next door. Like, the Philistines are going to come and slaughter David's mom, his dad, and his siblings. However, if David wins, all of Israel wins. And that's what happened. Because David won that victory, Israel won the victory. Because Jesus has won the victory for us, we all win in him. We don't have to battle for a sense of worth or victory or purpose. It's already been won for us. And that's the beauty of being a Christian. Now, if you're not a Christian, it makes total sense to see why two people will go head to head, because they've got to constantly prove their sense of self-worth and value, right? Who are you if you're not the best at this? Or who are you if you're not the greatest at that? No one is like, well, I'm just second best. I guess that's who I am. I mean, you could kind of find some contentment there, I guess, if you really wanted to. But then what happens when you're not second best? When you're not third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, when you just get all the way down to the totem pole and you're like, man, dang, everyone's better than me. When you turn 80 and you're none of those things anymore. I was on a flight one time. This football player was so obnoxious. He sat next to me and he was like 20 years removed from the NFL. He kept downing drinks and talking about his pro days. And I felt so bad for him, because I was like, yo, all he has is what he did. His worth is in his work. And when he doesn't have that work anymore, he doesn't know who he is. So he's just obnoxious, bragging about what he did 20 years ago. And we get to brag about who we are from eternity past to eternity future. And it's not because of anything we've done, but it's because of what Christ has already done. To me, that's the uniqueness of the position we have as Christians. So when I'm looking at Kendrick and Drake, as much as I love the fact that Kendrick is trying to call Drake up to something greater, Drake doesn't have that power within in and of himself. He doesn't have the power to find his value in anything else. I mean, you can try to say, well, I'm a good father, or I'm this, or I'm that. But guess what? even those things will run their course. And I commend Kendrick for saying, man, invest in your kids, get a family, give back to the community. I think all those are beautiful. And I don't think we can separate what we do from who we are. I think who we are is why we do what we do, and why we do what we do is because of who we are. But I think when you're doing the thing to become someone, it's different. If you're serving and loving and caring to become valuable, you're still earning it. It's no different than going out there trying to be the best, the biggest, the brightest. Now you're just trying to be the kindest, the most loving, but it's in your own will. Instead, you don't go out there trying to earn value by loving people well. You go out there, and because you are valued, because you are loved, you then love. Because you are purposeful, you then go live out that purpose. And people say, why are you doing that? It's because this is who I am. When people say, who are you? Well, look at what I'm doing. I'm doing this because this is who I am. And, I am this, so therefore I do. It's not I'm doing this so that I can gain value or become valuable. And I think it's almost like the Pharisaic trump card that Kendrick does have on Drake is, I'm doing self-work. I'm caring for my community. I'm taking care of my kids. And it's almost like a trap. That's a trap as well, because no one wins that battle. So what if Drake all of a sudden now just becomes a super philanthropist and starts killing it and serving the community and so on and so forth? Now he gets to say, oh, guess what, Kendrick? I am better than you. Ha. Now what are we battling about? We're not battling about who's the best. We're battling about who's the most self-righteous, who gave the most money away to charity. And now we're just Pharisees. Some people may be saying, man, how do I know if I'm even battling for my identity? How do I know if I'm even in this place? And it's so funny. I was just talking to a young artist the other day, and he was like, yo, my next album got to kill. And I said, why? And he was like, just because I feel like it'll impact people. I said, no. Don't mask it in Christian lingo. Why does your album have to kill? Let's dig down deep. And he said, he said, well, I just want people's lives to be changed by this music. And I said, okay. So let's say 3 lives are changed. Are you content? And he was like, I ain't gonna lie, that would be tough. I want as many as possible. I said, what if 3 is as many as possible? Well, that'd be tough. So how many is enough for you to find a sense of like, okay, I'm good? And he was like, dang, I don't know. I said, because your why is not really defined. Your why is more about your own desire to find your worth and identity out of a project selling well, more than it is about people's lives being impacted. And I said, just be honest about it. At least come to God with honesty, saying, God, there's a part of me that doesn't feel like I'm valuable if this doesn't kill, right? Like there's a part of me that feels like I'm not that valuable if I don't get more views on my YouTube episode. But I have to separate myself from that. And I know that if I'm looking at metrics or numerical things to show me who I am, I'm fighting for my identity and my worth. How many points did I get in the game? How much money did I make at this event? How many compliments did I get on my work? What I'm doing now is I'm fighting for my value and my identity. And identity work is tough. It's a lifelong journey. It's not something that you just, okay, I'm done with that. I got it. It's like you want to get to a place where you recognize it and not be, not just be washed over. So, again, I think that's where we have to land our plane, is that we have to get to a place where we understand that I'm fighting this and I'm not just existing and allowing the numbers and the charts and the points to tell me who I am, but I have my why defined before I enter into that arena. And I want us to know that we are who God says we are. We're not who the culture says we are. We're not who society says we are. We're not who our awards say we are. I am not my awards or my songs. You know who I am? I'm Ephesians 1, verse 3, blessed with every spiritual blessing. Verse 4, chosen, holy, and blameless. Verse 5, predestined. Verse 6, to the praise of his glorious grace, I'm beloved. Verse 7, redeemed and rich in grace. I'm verse 12, to the praise of his glory. I'm verse 13, I'm sealed with the Spirit. That's who I am. No one can take that from me. And I never earned it. What an identity. I never have to get in a battle to prove that. I don't have to fight for that. I don't have to prove it to anybody. I just live out of that reality. And people may say, wow, I love what you're doing. Well, I'm doing that because that's who I am. And I am that, so I do it. That's the ultimate trump card we have is being followers of Christ, man. If you're not a follower of Jesus and you watching this because you saw Drake and Kendrick being brought up and you stayed this long, I would say, man, you do not have to earn your purpose. You are made for the glory of God. He made you with purpose, worth, and value that you don't have to earn. You are broken because we all are. We live in a broken world. But that brokenness can be laid down at the feet of Jesus, who will bring healing, wholeness, restoration, and we will know it in full when this life is over and we move on to the next one. If you are a believer, listen, I'm not sitting here saying I didn't listen to all the songs and enjoy the talent and the art that the rap battle brought to the table. I am saying that another side of this multifaceted person had to do some self-work and say, man, but at the end of the day, what are we really battling for? And what would God want? I know what I want. I know what my flesh wants. My flesh wants blood. My flesh wants battles and entertainment. But my spirit wants love, peace, unity, what the Father wants. And I want that for you. Love y'all. Blessings.